Hello, it's Philip Taylor speaking from Richmond Green Chambers in London. This morning I'm looking at a book which has come to the Chambers, which we thought was a very topical book and very, very interesting in fact. It's about the Supreme Court, which has been in the news in the autumn of this year concerning Brexit. Not actually directly related to Brexit, but the book is called High Principle, Low Politics and the Emergence of the Supreme Court. And it's been written by Frederic Reynold Queen's Counsel and it's been published by Wildy, Simmonds Hill Publishing. Now for the review, Elizabeth and I talked about the book and I've written the main review, which is got this title. Ideal for the modern law student, unravelling the true role of the UK Supreme Court as it comes of age, because it's 10 years old. Now here's the book. It's a paperback. There it is. A very small paperback. Spine, picture of the author, Frederic Reynold. On the back you can see the book is very, very slim. There's a very small index at the back. It runs to 150 pages. The front of the book, there's the front page there. Then you've got the main front there, Wildy, Simmonds Hill imprint. You've then got the actual blurb there and then the actual contents. It's split into a number of parts. Part 1, Part 2, Part 3 and Part 4. I'll talk about those in a moment. Then you get a short preface, acknowledgements and then a preface from the author, which is written in August of this year. And then you get Part 1, a rumbling campaign and a startling outcome. Now I make no bones about saying one thing, and that is that there is a certain amount, and there always has been, a certain amount of criticism about the creation of the Supreme Court by Blair. The view initially was it was very, very expensive. I think until you've been there, which I have, and had the guided tour, which I have, and met some of the justices and had a nice discussion with them, it's very difficult to form a proper view about whether it's a good idea or a bad idea. I do know that the Conservative Party, the current government, certainly the grassroots of the party, because of the decision made about the proroguing of Parliament, has led to calls for it to be scrapped or reformed. Whether that happens or not is a bit irrelevant, frankly, because at the moment we are celebrating 10 years of the Supreme Court. It's made some interesting judgments, starting of course with the leading judgment in the banking case, which was the very first one that they heard about banking charges, known as the Abbey National case. Anyway, what do we say about the book? We say the book arrives at the right time, just the right time, autumn 2019, that's when I'm recording it, on a lovely autumn day. Most magnificent decisions we've had from the Supreme Court recently, and the one of course is Miller versus the Prime Minister. And we all know what happened. She won, he lost. What a coup for Wildy then, for Wildy, Simmonds Hill Publishing, to get this, because Boris is perpetually on the ropes, basically at the hands of the top judges. Now when I wrote this originally, we didn't know that there was going to be a general election. I'm recording this review at a time of the election campaign, so I don't know the outcome. However, our United Kingdom Supreme Court, UKSC, has now been in existence for 10 years, and it appears, certainly to us, to have seamlessly become part of the fabric of our legal system. And I say that because obviously I remember the old days with the House of Lords sitting as an appellate committee, and the very different sort of way in which one did things effectively as compared, say, with the Court of Appeal or the High Court or the County Court. Anyway, we've got the Supreme Court. I like it personally because it actually films everything, and I think it's very important for the public to see what's going on. And that was highlighted in the Miller case because obviously only a few people could physically go into the court, but the live streaming I think was seen by millions, either 2 or 4 million people. A very large number of people actually had access to what is called open justice. And I think that was a good thing for democracy. We, of course, now are delighted to see this book, as I say, High Principle, Low Politics and the Emergence of the Supreme Court from Frederic Reynold, which, and these are his words, it tells the remarkable story full of twists and turns of how and why this court came to be created. And I think that's important, again important, coming really from an idea from Blair and developing, because at that time the view of a lot of people was the House of Lords had run its course, and we needed something not the same as the Supreme Court in America or in Ireland for that matter, but we wanted something which would replace what was seen by many as an anachronistic system. Anyway, the book itself comes in 3 parts, as I indicated when showing it to you. Part 1 is a rumbling campaign and a startling outcome. That's the result of creation of court. Part 2, purists versus pragmatists, an arcane parliamentary battle. And as I say, there has been a lot of criticism. Dominic Grieve, for instance, was quite critical of the amount of money being spent at the time, as I recall. Part 3, of course, is The Court Emerges, and that's really where we are today. The appendix at the back then has a short statement on a new Supreme Court for the United Kingdom, written by Lord Bingham, a very, very outstanding judge, dated the 1st of May 2002, and it was actually the Constitutional Unit Spring Lecture for 2002, and we miss Lord Bingham because of his erudition, and he was a very leading jurist of his era. So in producing this surprisingly incisive commentary, the writer, Mr. Reynold, taps into a rich traditional, quote, seam of social and political history. Exactly so, because there were views about the nobility being the top court, when in fact the court's meant to be the court of the people. You can see there was an argument there by certain people of a certain political persuasion. Obviously it's a bit of misunderstanding by many people to really grasp what the top court should be, what it does and how it will operate. And so obviously many people, we think, will find great value in this book. Reynold gives us a special insight which is thankfully free of legal jargon, and I thought it was quite an easy read for the novice and the inexperienced, those people who really don't have much knowledge of what we're doing but want to find out more. Obviously there are the guided tours, and if you can book one, they're free and well worth attending up in London. What the book does, though, is it explains how the Supreme Court has performed in the light of both the fears and the expectations which greeted it on its arrival. And for many of us within the legal profession and the political world, we're delighted to see the new direction that the top court is moving in when it comes to things like the mixture of policy and the law. And I'm going to say here that I take a line that in fact the Supreme Court sometimes is not necessarily ruling specifically on law. I think it's making some policy decisions. Whether they're political or not is another matter, but I do think, and I certainly thought that with the House of Lords, that there are certain occasions where they're making decisions in a particular way, and it's guided by policy, not necessarily by law. But that's a really very difficult line to identify, but certainly that's the feeling of some people. Reynold declares that he has known personally some of the main characters in the story, so I haven't known them personally, but I've certainly met them, and many readers also will have known these particular people. And of course Reynold has a long and distinguished career at the bar, appearing in many landmark cases in different areas of the law, so he knows what he's talking about, and I'm delighted to be able to review the book, which I thought was a really interesting one. Of course, an earlier work that he wrote, a detailed memoir called Chance, Cheek and Some Heroics, was published in 2018, and it proved very popular. Of course, they've got to say that, but it did. And I think he writes very well, and it's coming from someone who knows what he's talking about. And I do think, from an educational point of view, this is a really interesting book for people reading jurisprudence, certainly for law students, and people generally to understand what's going on. And obviously what he is producing is work which is of a very high standard from such a distinguished professional. And I'd like to thank him very much for producing the work, and to Andrew Riddick and Wildys for publishing it. The paperback version was first published a little bit earlier this year, on the 26th of September 2019. Let's just have one last look at the book. It's paperback, as I say, not a big one at all, a very easy read. You can read it on the train. You can see the book in the middle. There's a little bit of footnoting. He does justify some of his assertions. He mentions, he's a name dropper like we all are. I have no bones about mentioning names, because that's what we do. We are people. We are people, and therefore names appear. And you see in the index quite a lot of names. All the suspects are here. you'll be pleased to note Lord Dyson, whom I have done a review of his work, and in fact quite a large number of very contemporary lawyers are mentioned as well. As I say, it does go into some detail, looking at the Wrecking Amendment, the debate that took place and so forth, and some of the other activities. But I do think this is a book, this is actually talking right at the beginning about how the campaign to set it up started, with mentioning a man called Derry Irving. Obviously you will know who he is because he was the Lord Chancellor, and there were a lot of changes during the Blair government which led to the creation of the... You can't actually see that in the visual, you can't really see the picture of the court. It's the old Crown Court which I appeared in, not as a defendant, I hasten to add, but as a practitioner, many years ago, and it's got a certain feel about it. I think they did a wonderful job. I know it cost a lot of money, but I think it was worth it, and I think this book's worth buying too. It's certainly worth reading, and thank you to all for producing it. Bye-bye.